Hey, good day, everyone. It's Charles Wilson from the DC Democratic Party, and I want to welcome you back to Statehood Speaks, the DC Democratic Party's podcast where we talk to local and national Democrats about why they are Democrats and what issues are important to them. I am really, really excited today that we have none other than the DNC Vice Chair, Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, who's going to join us today. Uh, Vice Chair, how are you doing? How are you doing?
I'm so happy to be with you, Chairman, and I love, first of all, I love the name of the podcast because let me just say off the bat, you know what we all know, that DC needs to become our 51st state, and that we are trapped right now in a paradigm where so many people across the district do not have the federal representation that they ought to have in terms of being able to have members who are going to vote against these crazy cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security that Republicans have been pushing in the middle of the night. So just wanted to start there.
Well, you started off great because you can't have a podcast called Statehood Speaks and not talk about DC statehood.
We
So
got
just
it.
to piggyback, just to piggyback on that, like, how do you live in Philly, right? Um, well, how do you see this DC statehood conversation evolving? How can we as DC residents connect with the broader American public on this issue?
Yeah, and I can't remember who has it. I know that there's a resolution introduced in the state, in the General Assembly here in Pennsylvania, urging Congress to move forward with statehood. And so I'll say that there's that effort to try to have people at least use their voice to talk about the importance of this and to use every mechanism that we have, including, resolutions, which is a formal, for people who don't pay attention to that, any body formally saying something. And so we've been working on that. But unfortunately, this has gotten trapped in the same sort of partisan games that a lot of good common sense ideas end up being trapped in. It's one of these situations, frankly, where a lot of Republicans feel like, oh, well, this will give Democrats two more Democratic senators, another Democratic member of Congress, and they don't want to do it. But that is a bad read, frankly, of the complex politics of the district, as you know. Yes, I think the district votes for Democrats, but I think it's in part because Democrats are the only ones who stand up for statehood and stand up for a lot of things people across the district want. But B, we have states with much smaller populations than the district that do have that same federal representation, and that is true irrespective of their political leanings. And so it's not, to me, a fair argument, or maybe even an accurate argument that this will, forever be two Democratic, senators, a Democratic congressperson. I think that people go out and make their case, but I also think, just like when we talk about gerrymandering, which this is in some ways a really extreme version of, right, of taking away people's voice. We should never be in a position where we say, well, those people might not vote for me, so we shouldn't let them vote. I live in a state that's very, divided, from political registration perspective, and certainly from who has won statewide elections. And so here in Pennsylvania, we understand that you can disagree with your neighbors. And as much as it may seem in vogue right now, your neighbors aren't your enemies. We're not each
Right.
other's enemies. And we should believe in the values of people being able to vote and participate, not because we know how they're going to vote and participate, but because we believe that everybody deserves the opportunity to vote and participate. And that's really what's on the line.
I love it. I love it. So before we dive even deeper, folks want to get to know you a little bit better. And I really do. I do start off our podcast off with the same question to all our guests. What inspired you to become a Democrat?
Yeah, that's an incredible question. For me, it's pretty simple. I grew up in a working poor family here in North Philly. My dad was a social worker. My mom was trained as a home health aide, and they were the best people in the world. But I always stop and laugh a little bit and chuckle, because as great as they were, they hated each other. And so what that meant for me is they separated when I was pretty young. I ended up getting my first job at 12. We moved all around. And I only had health care because of a little program called CHIP that you may have heard of. Like many people, my parents, if they found themselves in between gigs, employment was there to support them. When we weren't always able to keep food on the table, food stamps were there to support my family. And so I think the list goes on of me experiencing life, walking through life, not having everything I want or not having everything I feel like my family deserves. But I'm sitting here in front of you, and we were able to always have somewhere to go and something to eat, and the ability to go to a doctor, even if it was just a little clinic, because of the fingerprints of Democrats. There were a bunch of Democrats who fought for us to have food assistance, who fought for, the New Deal, who fought for the Great Society, who fought for all of these different uh, iterations over the years of trying to get to what I think is the core mission and message of the Democratic Party, which is just three words: make life better. When I look at my life wasn't perfect. It required a lot of hard work, and every day I still get up and there are things that are real pain points for me and for so many families. But when I think about who's really in the political arena, imperfectly, you can certainly argue, but who is in the political arena trying to make life better for folks? I think the answer is always the Democratic Party. And so for me, that's how I come to this. And I always make the point that I'm not a Democrat because I hate Republicans or because I hate the guy who's currently in the White House. I mean, I didn't even know him, okay, when I got registered. But somebody came with a clipboard, shoved it in my face, and said, hey, you need to get registered to vote. When it came down to check which party I was going to register for, it was clear to me that I was going to register for the party that was focused on making my life better.
Great. So you're now vice chair with the DNC. What inspired you to want to get more involved in the national party?
Clearly, because something's wrong with me, and I want because I enjoy being stressed. No, more seriously, I'm still right now in the state house, and I have the best job in the world serving my neighbors on the 181st district here in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. But what was clear to me after the last election we had, when it was inarguable that we needed to build a stronger Democratic Party, one that was able to meet this moment and try to stop a guy who, at his core, we can talk about his corruption, we can talk about his incompetence, we can talk about the grift, but at its core, Donald Trump has made people's lives worse. And the bills that Republicans have advanced have made people's lives worse. And when you think about the current iteration of the Republican Party, they are intent on making people's lives worse so that they can make things even better for billionaires. And I don't even know how you can make it better for billionaires, but they are doing their level best to try to make it even better for them. And so to that end, the question really for me was, were there skill sets? Were there things that I could do that could help strengthen this party in this moment? And I thought the answer was yes. I had run many years ago a campaign for a citywide election in Philadelphia, one of the youngest people to ever do that, even still. As I mentioned, serve in the state house. I ran for the U.S. Senate against John Fetterman. And so I had that experience electorally, either as a staffer or as a candidate at the state, local, and federal level. But because I am a local elected official, even though I'm a state elected official, I think about myself as a local elected official. I recognize that one of the big things our party needed to adjust was where we focus our time and our energy. And so for too long, we have treated the job of the DNC like we just need to throw a big party every 4 years and just elect the president. And we can lose every other race, who cares? I think the reality is it matters who your mayor is. It matters who your state representative is, who your state senator is. And when I think about a lot of the issues that people think about as national issues, the infancy of those issues have local origins. Even when you think about the who serves in Congress,
Hmm.
those lines aren't drawn in the dome on Capitol Hill. They are drawn in your state legislature where you live. When you think about the folks who are trying to ban books and make it more difficult for people to know the full and true and accurate history of this country, those book bans are happening at your local school board meeting where your kid or your
Hmm.
niece or your nephew or your grandkid goes to school. And the same is true about things like building, affordable housing, which we must, or building out the accessibility of childcare. All of those things have origins that are local, and those are the things that people, when they step back, that they really care about. And there's no one national panacea to those issues. The only way that we fix those issues is if we elect good people from the bottom of the ballot to the top of the ballot, and that requires a DNC that is thinking about how we get resources to that local level all the way up federally, and how we operationalize a real strategy that allows us to be successful.
Great. So let's talk a little bit more about the DNC. There's been a lot has been made about the vice chair elections
Yeah.
and how that's going to be resolved. How do you think this is going to impact? How do you think this is going to impact the DNC going forward?
Listen, this is a frustrating time. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, I'm a human being, and it is frustrating. And for people who haven't been following this, we had an election for all of our officers, including for vice chair. And one of the candidates who wasn't successful effectively argued that we didn't, that the chair of the meeting, when I say we, the chair of the meeting didn't properly follow Robert's Rules of Order. I disagree with her, but the Credentials Committee agreed with her, and basically they put out a recommendation that we rehold the elections for the 5 candidates to the 2 slots that are available. Now, I ended up getting the most votes of anybody who ran for vice chair, in part because of your great chair who I'm talking to right now. And so is it frustrating to me that we have to run another election? Absolutely, it's frustrating, particularly when I don't think any rules were violated. However, in the Democratic Party, unlike what we're seeing nationally in more serious arena of the federal court system, we're seeing folks who are ignoring due process, who are throwing out the rules if they don't like them. I don't think we need to ignore due process. I think that we should follow the rules. And though I don't think the rules were broken, there were some folks who have a different responsibility than I do who think the rules were broken. And so I think we address that by having a quick and speedy election, so that we can move forward, bring some finality to an issue that really should have been, and in my mind was finalized, months.
No, I appreciate that. Again, talking about the party nationally, not just the DNC, but there seems some folks said there's a divide in the party, whether it's based on race, gender, age, um, location. Like your role, how do you see your role as DNC vice chair to bridge those divides?
I think it's to help us get refocused on the main thing. And I know that I'm on the DC Statehood podcast. I'm about to create some drama here, but let me create a little drama by quoting the Super Bowl award-winning coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, I'm sorry to
Uh,
do that. I
Wrong podcast. Wrong podcast.
So Nick Sirianni, though, says to the team often, you got to keep the main thing the main thing. And I think that is true in this context, that we are never going to get to a point when people say the party, is divided. A party like ours, our strength is in the very fact that we have people who see the world differently. That's not a bad thing. In fact, that can be a good thing. And you can disagree, as the Saints would say, without being disagreeable. You can bring a lot of different things to the table and then ultimately still move forward in a way that is unified, even if it's not unanimous. And so I think that a lot of times when we think about how we come together as a party, people grade that on whether or not we have unanimity. And unanimity and unity are two separate things. And I think we have
Hmm.
unity around a shared set of values. And it goes back to those three words that I said: make life better. I think that that is the unifying message of this party, because it is our mission. It is what we are trying to do. We are the party that is trying to, no matter where you consider yourself in the spectrum, trying to make life more affordable for people, and who understand that there are a lot of people where your bank account and the crap that you have to pay for, it ain't matching up. We are the party that believes fundamentally that you should have access to healthcare. And we have had, fierce debates about how we achieve universal healthcare, while the Republican Party has said, screw you, die in the emergency room, with a line out the damn door. So, like, yes, we're having real debates about that, but we need to recognize that there's real unity in the understanding that we need to make people's lives better by allowing them to have access to healthcare. We are the party that believes in protecting Social Security. And so we understand that Social Security is not a Ponzi scheme, like Republicans say. And it is the promise that we make to our seniors that's not just a philosophical promise, but it's a promise that they pay into. They pay into their future by contributing to Social Security, as we all do, every single paycheck, because you understand that when you get to the age where you can start pulling down, that the government is going to stand by the promise that they made to you when they took those couple of dollars out of your check. So I think as Democrats, we have to recognize that if we're going to win, elections are about addition, not subtraction. It's not about having only people around you who you want to hang out with and have dinner with. There are going to be some people in this party who have ideas that you don't like. But as long as they are focused on the main thing of lowering people's costs, of treating everybody with dignity and decency, and of ensuring that people can have a quality of life that's not, piss poor, then I think we're in a strong spot, not only to win elections, but in a strong spot to move the huge mechanics of government in a single direction of making people's lives better.
Great. So, we got to those young people out there who are listening to this podcast, and they see you as serving as vice chair of the party. What message do you have to them to not be disenchanted, to stay engaged, uh, to feel like their voice matters, their vote matters? What message do you have for them?
I would go back to something my grandfather said. My grandfather, Muhammad Kenyatta, was a civil rights activist and a real warrior for justice, and was an incredible person. Uh, that being said, he passed when I was very young, but many of his little idioms have been, passed throughout the family. And one of them is that he would often say to people who would say to him, "Oh, I don't do politics," particularly young people. He would say to
Hmm.
them, "Well, politics does you. Well, politics does you." And
Yeah.
so I think that sometimes people have frustration about politics. And then their approach is to say, well, I'm frustrated about politics. It hasn't done this, this, and this. These things in my life need to be made better, and they're not better, Malcolm. You say make life better. Well, my life is not better in this area, or that area. And so I'm just going to choose to not engage. And the reality is twofold of that choice. The first choice is decisions are going to be made about your life and whether it gets better or worse, irrespective of what you do. So you can choose to disconnect from the system, and still there are going to be people who are going to be elected in those elections that you ignored, who are going to either make your life better or try to make your life worse. And what I would say is the people who are on the side of the ledger that are about making your life worse, they absolutely love when you make it clear you're not going to engage in the political system. They love it because they recognize that if the working class of this country and the middle class of this country and the poor of this country, if we organize together if we stop chasing the shiny distractions that they want to use to try to divide us up, we would be unstoppable in terms of moving this country in a direction of being more just, of being more economically fair, and of upending this paradigm where the very few have all of the benefits while the rest of us have to fight and argue over the scraps. We can achieve those things. We can make it easier for people to buy that first home and to stay in it throughout the course of their life. We can lower the cost of childcare. We can make sure that job that's not even paying you $15 right now could pay you at least $15. And you know what? Once everybody's at least $15, it raises the ceiling for everybody else when you raise the floor. We can be in a position where it's easy as hell for you to join a union if we pass the PRO Act. We can do a host of different things, but the truth is, none of that happens in one election. The truth is, none of that happens just because we elect a president that you like. The truth is, that happens because, at least in Pennsylvania, we have an election every 6 months. And it requires you to go and do what we can all do every 6 months, try to educate ourselves about who's on the ballot and how the work that they do intersects with our life, and then go pick the person who's laying out the vision of how to make life better. And if you look at those candidates or the people who are talking about running, and you don't see somebody who is focused on making your life better, then you know what? Then that might be your cue. That might be the tap on the shoulder you're waiting for to go and run yourself.
I love it. I love it. So, Vice Chair Kenyatta, thank you so much for joining us today on Statehood
Thank you for
Speaks.
having me. I really appreciate it.
Really enjoyed the conversation, and you are more than welcome to come back, especially when the Washington Commanders become the Super Bowl champions. Um, we're welcome to come back.
Listen, you got a good squad, but but the reality is you're gonna have to go through the current reigning Super Bowl
Yeah.
champs, and I will tell you, we just had both of our Lombardi trophies at my job on the house floor recently, and I was touching them, and the people were yelling. They were like, "Don't touch them, don't touch them." But it was great. It was worth it. It was worth me being yelled at. So I'll take it.
Well, don't drop it like JD Vance.
I did not drop it. I did not drop it.
Well, you got bragging rights for a year, so I'll give it to
Thank
you.
you.
But again,
Thank you.
thank you so much. I'm really excited about your leadership in the DNC, and looking forward to working with you in this capacity.
And you too.
So thank you again.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, have a great one.
Take care.